The notification came at 2:14 a.m. Aaliyah almost ignored it. Her room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the distant sound of traffic outside her window. She told herself no expectations. Language exchange apps were full of promises that faded after a few polite conversations. Still, she tapped answer. For a second, the screen stayed black. Then his face appeared. He looked surprised, like he hadn't expected her to actually show up. His hair was slightly messy, falling into his eyes, and the light from his phone cast soft shadows across his face. He wasn't smiling yet, just staring. "Oh," he said quietly, "you're real." Aaliyah blinked, then laughed. A small, nervous sound. "That's usually how humans work." He smiled then, slow, uncertain, but genuine. "I'm Joon-hyuk," he said, bowing his head a little out of habit. "Sorry, it's late here." "It's late here too," she replied. "Guess we're both breaking rules already." Something settled between them. Not awkwardness, comfort. The strange kind that didn't make sense. They started with the basics. Why they downloaded the app. What languages they wanted to learn. Where they lived. But the conversation kept drifting. Like neither of them wanted to stay on the surface. "Why English?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because I want to leave Korea someday, even if it's just for a while." That surprised her. Most people she met online spoke about loving their country too much to ever leave. "And you?" he asked. "Why Korean?" Aaliyah leaned back against her pillow. "Because I wanted to understand people who feel far away, without them feeling distant." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked at her like he was trying to read between her words. They laughed when his pronunciation failed her name. "Aaliyah?" "No," she said gently. "Listen, Triple Aaliyah." He repeated it again, slower this time. When he finally got it right, something fluttered in her chest. Small, unexpected, dangerous. Hours passed unnoticed. They talked about childhood memories, about music that made them cry for no clear reason, about the pressure of becoming who their families expected them to be. At one point, Joon-hyuk went quiet. "My parents think love should be practical," he said. "Someone who fits." Aaliyah nodded slowly. "Mine think love should be safe." "Is it?" he asked. She looked at him through the screen. "No," she admitted. "But that's why it matters." Silence fell again, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Finally, his eyes flicked to the time on his phone. "I should sleep," he said reluctantly. "I have work in 4 hours." She smiled. "Same time tomorrow?" He hesitated just for a heartbeat. Then, "Yes, tomorrow, if you want." "I do," she said. When the call ended, Aaliyah stared at her dark screen longer than she meant to. She told herself it was nothing, just a conversation, just a stranger. But somewhere in Seoul, Joon-hyuk lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling, his phone still warm in his hand, thinking the same thing. And neither of them noticed the quiet truth forming beneath it all. This was not going to stay small. What started as tomorrow became every day. Aaliyah began recognizing the sound of his voice before her phone even finished loading the message. His voice notes were always soft, careful, like he was afraid to wake someone else in his world. "Good morning," he would say, even when it was night for her. "I hope you ate something." She'd listened to them more than once. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to feel close when distance tried to remind her otherwise. Soon, they weren't correcting grammar anymore. They talked while brushing their teeth, while walking to work, while lying in bed, lights off, pretending sleep was optional. Joon-hyuk showed her the view from his window. Gray buildings stacked too close together, the city breathing even at dawn. "This place feels lonely," she said. "It is," he replied, "but less when you're here." That sentence stayed with her longer than it should have. They shared their fears carefully like fragile objects. Aaliyah spoke about being strong all the time, about how people mistook independence for not needing love. Joon-hyuk talked about expectations, about being the eldest son, about how every decision he made felt like it belonged to someone else. One night, She asked casually, "What do your parents think about dating?" The pause came too quickly. "They think it should be serious," he said. "With someone suitable." "Suitable how?" she asked, smiling, trying to keep it light. "Korean, educated, known family." Her smile faded, but her voice stayed calm. "And me?" Another pause, longer this time. "They don't know about you," he said quietly. The words weren't cruel, but they weren't kind either. "I see," she said. That night, after they hung up, Aaliyah replayed the conversation in her head. Not angry, just aware. Love didn't disappear because of silence, but silence could starve it. Days later, Joon-hyuk sent a voice note instead of calling. "I thought about what you asked," he said. "About my parents. I don't want to hide you forever." Her chest tightened. "Then don't. I'm just not ready yet." She closed her eyes, listening to his breath between words. "Take your time," she said eventually. "Just don't lose me while you're thinking." Something shifted after that. Their conversations grew deeper but heavier. They said, "I miss you more often." They joked about imaginary dates. They argued softly about small things like whose country had better food. One night, as rain hit her window, Aaliyah whispered, "What are we doing, Joon-hyuk?" There was a smile in his voice. "Falling. Slowly." She should have been scared. Instead, she smiled into the darkness and replied, "Then don't let go." Neither of them noticed how the word "we" had quietly replaced "someday." And somewhere far away, his parents were already imagining a future where she didn't exist. Aaliyah didn't plan to say it. The words came out on a night when both of them sounded tired. Emotionally, not physically. The kind of tired that comes from holding feelings in without knowing where to put them. "I think I might come to Korea." Joon-hyuk went silent. She could see it on his face, the way his eyes searched her screen, as if he were checking whether she was joking. "Come?" he repeated softly. "As in here?" "Yes." She swallowed. "I got an email today. A short-term contract. 3 months. His smile didn't arrive right away. Instead, worry stepped in first. "That's far," he said. "And expensive." "I know. And Korea isn't easy," he added. "People stare. They ask questions." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "They already do." He ran a hand through his hair, standing up and pacing his small room. "What if it's awkward in person?" he asked. "What if we don't connect?" Aaliyah leaned closer to her screen. "Then at least we'll know," she said. "I don't want to love a voice forever." That stopped him. He turned back toward her slowly. "You love me?" he asked. Her breath caught. "I didn't say that," she replied quickly. "But I could." The honesty scared them both. Later that night, when the call ended, Joon-hyuk sat alone, staring at his dark screen. He thought about his parents' expectations, about the future they had carefully planned, about how none of it included the woman who now lived in his thoughts. In the kitchen, his mother asked casually, "Are you still talking to that foreign girl?" He froze. "She's just a friend," he lied. But the lie tasted bitter. 2 days later, Aaliyah sent him a screenshot. Flight confirmed. His heart dropped and lifted at the same time. "When?" he typed. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to hide. 2 weeks to decide if love was worth the consequences. That night, he called her. "You don't have to do this for me," he said quietly. "I'm not," she replied. "I'm doing it for us." He wanted to believe that word could protect them. But as he hung up, Joon-hyuk looked at his family's framed photo on the shelf and realized something terrifying. Once she arrived, nothing would stay the same. And somewhere across the world, Aaliyah lay awake, hand resting on her packed suitcase, wondering if love would welcome her or send her home broken. Incheon Airport was louder than Aaliyah expected. Rolling suitcases, echoing announcements, languages colliding in the air. Yet somehow everything felt muted, like the world had lowered its volume just for her. She stood near the arrival gate, fingers tight around her phone, heart pounding too hard for a body that had been awake for nearly 20 hours. What if he doesn't come? What if he sees me and changes his mind? Then she saw him. Joon-hyuk stood a few steps back from the crowd, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, shoulders tense. He kept checking his phone, then the gate, then his phone again, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he blinked. Their eyes met. The noise vanished. He didn't smile immediately. He just stared, like he was confirming she was real, like his heart needed proof. Aaliyah dropped her bag without realizing it. They walked toward each other slowly, awkwardly, unsure of the rules that applied when an online world suddenly became physical. When they finally hugged, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate, tight, real. Joon-hyuk inhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath for months. "You're here," he whispered into her hair. She laughed, muffled against his chest. "I told you I would be." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands still resting on her arms, grounding himself. "You look tired," he said. She smiled. "You look scared." He didn't deny it. Outside, the air was cold. Neon signs reflected on wet pavement as they walked side by side, hands brushing, not quite holding yet, like both of them were afraid to rush something fragile. In the taxi, silence settled. Not uncomfortable, heavy. "I imagined this so many times," Joon-hyuk said softly. "Me too," she replied. It was never enough. When he finally reached for her hand, his fingers trembled. She squeezed back. That night, walking through Seoul, the city felt unreal. Bright lights, narrow streets, the smell of food she couldn't name. "This is my world," he said quietly. "It's not always kind." She looked at him. "Neither is mine." They stopped on a bridge, city lights reflecting on the water below. Joon-hyuk turned to her. "I didn't tell my parents you arrived." Her chest tightened, but she nodded. "I figured." He took her hands fully this time. "I don't want to hide you," he said. "I just need time." She searched his face, reading the fear between his words. "I didn't come here to be invisible," she said gently. "But I didn't come to break you either." They stood there, holding hands, caught between hope and truth. Neither of them knew that this night, their first together, would be the last moment love felt uncomplicated. Because somewhere across the city, his parents were already asking questions. And soon, they would want answers. Aaliyah knew something was wrong the moment Joon-hyuk stopped walking. They were outside a quiet apartment building, the kind with perfectly trimmed hedges and windows that didn't let the inside world leak out. "My parents want to meet you," he said. The words felt rehearsed. His voice didn't. "Now?" she asked, though the answer was already there. Yes. Her first instinct was to say no. Her second was worse, to run. Instead, she inhaled slowly. "You should have told me earlier." "I know," he said. "I was afraid you wouldn't come." She looked at him, really looked. The fear in his eyes wasn't about her reaction. It was about choosing between two worlds that refused to touch. Inside, the apartment smelled like home and control. His mother greeted them first. Her smile was polite, sharp around the edges. His father nodded once, eyes already assessing. They sat. The table was full, but the room felt empty. "So," his mother began in Korean, eyes resting on Aaliyah like she was a temporary guest. "How long will you be visiting Korea?" Aaliyah answered calmly, choosing each word carefully. She smiled when expected. She bowed when appropriate. But she felt it, the way the conversation bent around her without including her. The way his parents spoke about her rather than to her. "Do you plan to work here?" his father asked. "Yes," Aaliyah replied. "I already am." Silence followed. Not impressed, not curious. Later, his mother turned to Joon-hyuk. "You didn't tell us she was black." The room froze. Aaliyah pretended not to understand the Korean words she absolutely did. Joon-hyuk's jaw tightened. "That shouldn't matter." His mother's smile vanished. "It does." Dinner ended quickly. Too quickly. On the walk home, Joon-hyuk didn't speak. Neither did Aaliyah. Inside his apartment, she finally said, "You knew this would happen." "Yes," he admitted. "But I hoped it wouldn't hurt you." She laughed bitterly. Hope doesn't soften rejection. Later that night, while Aaliyah showered, His mother called. "She cannot stay," she said without hesitation. "You will end this." Joon-hyuk stared at the wall, phone heavy in his hand. He loved Aaliyah, but love had never demanded this much from him before. And in the next room, Aaliyah wrapped herself in a towel, staring at her reflection, wondering how something so beautiful could feel so unwelcome. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Aaliyah sat on the edge of the couch, her suitcase still by the door. Her heart raced with a mixture of anger, fear, and heartbreak. She could hear Joon-hyuk pacing behind her, each step a drumbeat of tension. "You should go back," he said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. She turned sharply, eyes blazing. "You don't mean that." He stopped pacing, finally facing her. His dark eyes were conflicted, torn between what he wanted and what he feared. "My parents," he began, his words faltering. "They said, they don't accept this. They said, your parents don't love me," she interrupted, the pain in her voice cutting like a knife. "But do you?" He flinched as if struck. The question hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. I love you," he whispered finally, but the words trembled with fear. "But I'm scared." She shook her head slowly, tears brimming. "Love that's afraid doesn't survive, Joon-hyuk. You can say you love me all you want, but if you let fear control it, it doesn't matter." He sank onto the couch beside her, silent. The weight of his family's expectations crushed him. He wanted to fight. He wanted to scream. But all he could do was sit there, helpless, knowing that love demanded a courage he didn't know he had. Aaliyah stood abruptly, picking up her suitcase. I can't stay here, living in your fear. I came for us, not for hesitation. I hoped love would be enough." He reached out, but she shook her head. "Don't touch me." The click of the apartment door closing echoed louder than thunder. She was gone. Joon-hyuk remained seated, staring at the empty space she had just occupied. His phone buzzed on the table, a text from her. "I needed to know if love could fight. Couldn't tonight." He picked up the message, heart heavy, palms sweaty. Rage, sorrow, and regret collided inside him. He wanted to call her back, to chase her through the streets of Seoul, to beg her to stay. But he didn't. Instead, he sat in silence, realizing the brutal truth. Love alone would not be enough unless he chose it. Truly, recklessly, and without hesitation. And somewhere, deep inside, he knew that the next move would define everything. 3 days later, Aaliyah sat at the airport, the hum of travelers around her like a distant storm. Her suitcase was by her side, her hands clutching her phone, fingers trembling slightly. She had decided to leave, not because she didn't love him, but because love that wasn't fully embraced was a cage. Her heart ached as she stared at the boarding gate, imagining Seoul without him. She had already accepted the pain, but the universe had other plans. Her phone buzzed. "I chose wrong. I'm on my way." Aaliyah's breath caught. She looked up, half expecting it to be a mistake, a joke, or someone else. Footsteps echoed behind her. Strong, familiar, hesitant, fearless. Joon-hyuk stood there, eyes red, coat wrinkled from running through the airport. His hand trembled as he held her gaze. "I told them everything," he said, voice shaking but determined. "All of it. My parents, my future, they don't get to decide my heart. I do." Tears streamed down Aaliyah's face. Relief, disbelief, and love collided into one overwhelming moment. She didn't speak. She couldn't. He took her hands in his. "I'll lose my family if I choose you, but I'll lose myself if I don't," she finally whispered. "Then don't lose yourself." They embraced, this time not with fear, but with certainty. The airport faded around them. Only their hearts existed, beating in sync for the first time in months. Joon-hyuk pulled back just slightly, brushing her hair from her face. "No more hiding, no more waiting. This is us. Right here, right now." She smiled through tears. "This is worth everything." The boarding call echoed. Reality still existed. Bills, expectations, culture, judgment. But none of it mattered in that moment. They had chosen love. Fearless, reckless, and true. And in that choice, they found freedom. Would you fight for a love that could cost you everything? Comment, I would, if you believe love is stronger than fear. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see what happens next in their journey. Part 2 is coming. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.